All right, so back to the advantages of a corporation. Secondly, another big advantage is that you can transfer ownership of this company, right? So if I own a restaurant by myself, all right, whether that restaurant does well or not is like solely on me. So if that restaurant starts to do poorly, I'm gonna have to kind of go down with the ship or close it up early. With a corporation, it's a little bit different, right? So like let's look at Amazon versus Sears. So Amazon, I knew was going to be doing really well over the pandemic, right? Because people are ordering more things online. At the same time, Sears is going out of business because no one wants to go to in-person stores anymore, at least not on the level that they were before. So I could sell that stock of Sears before it bankrupted me, before it started to go down in value. All right, and so the ownership of stocks is a very kind of an easy way to invest because you can kind of come and go as you please. If I wanted to sell all of my stocks or all my, or not really my bonds because those are a little bit different. If I wanted to sell all of my stock, by the end of the day, I could. It'd be easy. I might not make a lot of money off of it if I'm selling it right away, but I could bail out of this business if I wanted to. All right, and lastly, so they attract a lot of capital. They attract a lot of money for a lot of different reasons, right? If I were to ask you whether you wanted to invest in Sicoli Snack Shack or to invest in McDonald's, chances are you would probably pick the McDonald's, right? It's already got the name recognition. It's got the backing of a larger corporation, so that they've got longer lives, right? I've seen 1 million restaurants go out of business in Brunswick, but none of them were McDonald's, none of them were Burger King, because they were all supported by these corporations. All right, and so these corporations exist in perpetuity. All right, that word perpetual just means forever, right? If you look at, Ford Motors as a good example, right? Henry Ford's long been dead. But Ford Motors is going to keep on existing until they stop paying their taxes. Same thing with Walmart. Sam Walton's dead, right? With Apple, Steve Jobs is dead. But these corporations are going to continue to exist. Because in the eyes of the law, they're seen as their own people. All right, and so it's kind of weird like that. But they generally have much longer lifespans than other types of businesses. All right, and the last disadvantages of a corporation on the flip side with the disadvantages, all right, they're much more heavily regulated by the government because they can do a lot more damage. All right, as we'll see with the Wells Fargo article in just a second, right, because of their size and because of a lack of responsibility or lack of liability, they're much more heavily regulated by the government. So after our last economic crisis, right, back in like 2008 when the housing market crashed, the government stepped in and said, all right, we're going to start regulating banks a lot more heavily, right? Because obviously they're greedy and they won't do this themselves. All right? Corporations are taxed much more heavily, right? They're taxed on profits and capital gains. The capital gains is what we were talking about over here with the value of my stock going up. So corporations are taxed much, much more heavily. All right, and arguably one of the biggest downsides of these corporations is a loss of control. And you see this happening with Papa John Schnatter, the owner of Papa John's. So for those of you that don't know, last year, or maybe it was the year before that, in the middle of a conference call, John Schnatter said some really, really racist stuff during the conference call. All right, and so the rest of his board of directors and the shareholders of Papa John's voted him out as CEO. So John Schnatter is no longer the CEO of the company that he built. He no longer has control over his own company because he sold over half of it, right? He got greedy. He wanted to make a lot of money off of Papa John's because it's a valuable company. But he no longer gets to make big decisions about the company anymore because the board of directors voted him out as CEO. All right, and so a downside of corporations is that you can lose control over these businesses. Same thing happened with Walmart, right? When it was just Sam Walton, he could make all of the decisions for the company. But when he divided up his stock amongst all of his kids, and his kids started selling off the company, now no one person can make all of these decisions anymore. The kids kind of have to work together to have control over the company. And they very often work against one another to try to keep more control. And so yeah, those would be the big downsides of corporations. We'll talk about a couple more unusual kinds of setups tomorrow, but I want to read an article about corporations first.